Welcome back, pop culture nerds. Today's guest is an actor known for his performances in a bevy of iconic properties across TV and film. You might recognize him from Transformers, Robots in Disguise, TMNT, and, of course, his recurring role on Friends as Barry Farber. We are honored to welcome Mitchell Whitfield. Mitchell, how are we doing?
I'm doing great. You know, you didn't mention my cousin Vinny, so I think I should go right now.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to go.
Well, great interview.
I just wanted to create the. I'm usually very low maintenance, but now I'm just so twisted. I don't know. Thank you for the nice intro. It's great to be here.
Man.
It's been a long time coming because we've been talking to each other over the social medias, as I call them, and I'm so glad we could do this. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah, as you say, as two lifelong Donatello fans, one of your jobs alone had us thrilled and excited to have you on the show.
You know what's I appreciate. Thank you for saying that. And you know what's really weird. I'm normally very excited, when I start a new project, and I'm always, looking forward to. I wouldn't do something if I didn't have, a certain joy associated with it, either from an existing property like Transformers or TMNT or a script that I read and like, wow, I really want to be a part of this. Generally, if you do something, you want to be a part of it, right? So I'm generally excited to do something. I found that I was playing Donatello, and once it sunk in, I was a little, not nervous, but I was a little, I really don't want to screw this up, because it was an existing franchise that I loved before I was ever a part of it. My family, I had two kid brothers. I'm the oldest of, three. I have two half brothers that are much younger than me. And so I was excited for them, like, oh, your brother's going to be a turtle, even though they were maybe a little past that age at the time. But I remember thinking, God, don't mess this up. This is an iconic character. Don't be the one guy. We love all the voices except Mitchell Whitfield. He was awful. You have this thing in your head like, don't mess it up. So I think there's a certain responsibility when you're playing an established character in a beloved franchise that once the excitement wore off, I was like, okay, got to do a good job. Got to be a good Donatello. And but I was so excited to do that just because I was a fan too, like you guys. So it was sort of cool for me to be able to do that.
I gotta say, the first time I heard Donatello say, "No, I'm not playing hard to get," when he's answering the phone.
No, I'm not playing hard to get. I remember doing that. I remember the exact thing. I'm just your tech support. Sir, ma'am. I remember that scene. I saw the cut of that scene of me doing tech support, and I loved it. I was like, I kind of sound like Donatello, my version of Donatello. I like this. I can be a turtle. I can really do it. So I remember that tech support scene was awesome. That was so much fun. Kevin Monroe did a great job. He did a great job with everything in that. So, that was really cool.
Well, tell you what, before we get too far, do you prefer to be called Mitch or Mitchell? Because I do not want to screw that up.
You can call me anything. Make it Mitchell. No, it's fine. I'm really good at that. Here's the thing I don't understand. You tell me. It's sort of like a pet peeve. Mitchell Whitfield, pet peeve 101. There's your creepy intro for that. Yeah, a pet peeve for Mitchell. So I don't mind if people call me Mitch or Mitchell. I'm really cool with it. I'll always introduce myself as Mitchell. I'll never refer to myself as Mitch, but people can call me whatever they want. The one thing I never understood is somebody comes over and says, "Hey, so-and-so, I'm Steve. What's your name?" And say, "Hey, I'm Mitchell." They say, like, "Hey, Mitch." Now, that's what drives me nuts. Now, normally it would be fine, but if someone asks, "What's your name?" and you give it to them on a platter, "Oh, I'm Mitchell." "Hey, Mitch." It's like, but I didn't say Mitch. I said Mitchell. Now, again, I don't normally care, except if someone asks and then I say, "Oh, it's Mitchell," and they call me Mitch, which is kind of odd to me. Some Michaels don't like to be called Mike. Some Roberts don't like Bob. I happen to not care, but I think it's interesting that if you give it to someone and they say something else, it's totally weird. Now, is that just me or is that a little weird? You can say it's a little weird.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
You can tell them if they ask and you tell them, and then they come, something else.
Yeah,
it's weird.
Yeah, I mean, even when it's family, it's not okay when that happens. Like I know, I'm fine with Joseph or Joe, but never.
It's my middle
Joey.
name, by the way. Joseph is my middle name. Yeah.
Well, see, there you go, Mitchell. That rolls off the tongue nicely.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
But never Mitch Joey. We don't mix.
Wow, that is a creep fest.
No.
Yeah,
that's bad.
Mitch Joey's a total creep fest. Yeah. I'm Mitch Joey.
That guy's got a rat tail and a leather jacket on.
Yeah, don't leave him alone with your kids. It's not a good name for that either. It's just it's not right. No.
Oh,
creepy.
man.
Creepy.
Yeah, we can guess the year IROC you drive though when you got Mitch Joey going.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's a great reference, by the way.
Yeah. That guy's punched a hole in drywall before, I'm guessing. So now I'm not just wearing this Yankees cap because you're on the show today, but I understand that you hail from Brooklyn.
Yes. And strangely enough, I'm a Mets fan, but that's okay. I still like the Yankees.
Okay.
I went to the 78 World Series and saw the Yankees at Yankee Stadium, but I'm a Mets fan. But still,
Okay.
yeah, I'm a real New York kid. You know, that happens. You get divided at a young age. You pick your teams, and that's just the way it goes.
I was going to say, I mean, is there ever like a war of the five boroughs? Do you guys ever have like a fight for supremacy out there? I've always wondered.
No. You mean back in New York? No. I mean, you know, I first of all, it's weird. I was born in Brooklyn, but I was raised in Manhattan. And I remember years ago, I did the first Tonight Show that when Jay Leno took over. I did the first episode when Jay Leno took over. So he did 2 episodes that night. Mine and the next one. Mine didn't air. The next one did air. So we were like the rehearsal show, which I didn't care. I thought it was kind of fun to do. And I remember him saying, "Hey, Mitchell, it says, you know, you were born in Brooklyn, New York. That's great. And you moved to Manhattan when you were 3. Why?"
Because
all I could think was like, Jay, I was 3. What was I going to say? No, I'm holding out for a better deal. My parents were going. I'd better go with them. He didn't think it was that funny. I thought it was pretty funny. It was like an odd thing. He's like, "Why'd you leave?" It's like, "I was 3. I went where they told me to go. There's a room for you in this new place. That's where I'm going." So, yeah. But,
I assumed when you were walking out of a ball game and Keith Hernandez just spit on you.
Yeah.
Out of nowhere.
And we never
He
found the
just had to get
second
out of
spitter, which is creep. Yeah, that's really weird. No, but yeah, it's fun. It's funny to me, you know, having played some New York characters actually in movies and, you know, in TV, to actually be from New York, and people get a lot of, you know, "Well, you don't sound like from New York." Well, I can turn it on if I want to, you know. It's not a big deal. It's like, "Oh yeah, now I can hear it." It's like, "Yeah, but I grew up in Manhattan." And, you know, growing up in Manhattan, you don't really have the accent that if I had stayed in Brooklyn or Queens or Bronx or Staten Island, my accent would have been a lot stronger. But yeah. Met fan, Mets, Yankees, and Jets. Mets, Yankees.
Wow, okay.
I'm sorry. Mets, not Yankees. Mets, Rangers, and Jets. What am I saying?
Oh, yes.
Mets, Rangers, and Jets. So yeah, I have friends that are the opposite, but we still talk. It's fine.
Well, as a awkward transplant, or not transplant, but oddly planted Dolphins fan in Wisconsin, sir, we have quite the season ahead of us.
Yes, you do, and quite the lovely little team. I'm very excited. That's going to be a tough division this year.
It's going to be. I'm excited for it, man. I am just happy that the one-sided Patriots reign is finally done for a while.
You're not the only one. And listen, I think the NFL's a better place with a good Miami Dolphins team. I grew up my grandfather was always a Dolphins fan, so they're my adopted second team. So I always sort of follow them, and I have a buddy out here, my buddy Reed, who's also a huge Dolphins fan. So I just think football is better when the Dolphins are relevant. So
absolutely.
I'm looking forward to it too. It's really cool.
And relevant, not just because of an Ace Ventura movie. So
exactly, a little different. Yeah. Skills for although they were pretty good back then too. But yeah.
Well, I tell you what. Now, for those that listen to this program, we tend to focus a little bit more on the life before the career, and we did want to ask you a little bit about life in Brooklyn and Manhattan, you know, when you were growing up, because, you know, we're interested in your worldview from that point of time, because this is me being more of like a history buff. My dad was in the military, kind of forced us to look at history. Right. And I say that like it was a chore, but it was actually interesting. But from what I can remember from, I guess, the area that you were growing up in, wasn't it very much packed with like riots, protesting, a lot of, you know, like civil rights issues kind of in the mainstream? I mean, is that kind of what things were like for you?
I mean, growing up like in Greenwich Village, you know, it's funny. It's a very different vibe growing up there than, let's say, being out in California. It's a very different way of life, a very different point of view. For me, growing up in New York, I always saw, I remember, you know, Gay Pride Parade before it was a thing nationally. It was a thing every year in New York City growing up in Greenwich Village. It was the norm for me. Civil rights and activism in New York was sort of like a way of life. It wasn't a strange thing or something that popped up. It was, everyone sort of had a voice in New York at the time. And I think that's what I loved about being in New York, is that you couldn't afford to be bigoted in any way because it was such a mixed, fantastic city. And in that way, growing up in that environment where, you know, I was the minority growing up where I grew up. So, you know, being able to be around people, you had baked in tolerance growing up in New York, and you had to, because it was a completely mixed city, which I loved. So New York was always sort of aware that maybe the rest of the country wasn't that way, or at least not at all times. So it was kind of a cool thing to be exposed to a lot of different points of view and people speaking up, not being afraid to speak up, being in a city where people were never afraid to speak their mind. And you sort of were embracing the differences. the differences that we all had, whether it's religion, politics, everyone sort of embraced it. And this city had to come together. And growing up there, I think because it's such, especially Manhattan, it's so small, you were constantly around people. You couldn't not be comfortable around people, let alone people that were different than you, whether it's the color of their skin, their sexual orientation, whatever it is. You were around everybody. So you were exposed to things early on that just like, oh, it's no big deal. You're growing up in New York. It's sort of like having that bulletproof vest. It's like I've been exposed to everything. I'm tolerant. I like to think I'm a tolerant person. I'm a sort of welcoming person. I don't have problems with people different that grew up with different preferences or different ways of life than I did. It's sort of the norm for me. So for that reason, I think growing up in New York was an incredible experience. And I thought it was weird coming to California, which again, I think a lot of people think of as like a very open state, open to different types of people and different points of view, and again, sexual orientation and different religion. But I found this to be a much more segregated city than growing up in New York. It was a very different vibe. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't trade growing up in that time, in that city for everything, because I think, like I said, it just gave me a wider view of the world. I think it's very easy for any of us to think wherever we grow up that's, we get a very myopic view of the world. Like, okay, I grew up in so-and-so city. Well, that's the world. That's the real world. It's like, no, the world is a bigger place with bigger points of view and bigger people, bigger than us. And I think growing up in a city like that, gave me a nice, healthy viewpoint to start off with, if that sort of answers the question a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, it definitely does. And it kind of lends me to think about those areas, because I lived near both at one point in time. And New York being a much more vertical city compared to, let's say, a Los Angeles or even a San Francisco that are spread out and actually have, like you mentioned, these pockets of where people move to.
Right.
I imagine New York just doesn't have that choice, right? Like you've got maybe some segregated parts of town, but I don't think that's the larger scope. I from what I've experienced, at least.
No, I mean, and I think, like you said, because of the proximity, it gives it a different vibe. I mean, yes, we still had our areas, Little Italy and Chinatown and Koreatown. I mean, we had areas where, people that came to this country and settled in New York, and they came off the boat, went to New York, and they had their communities. Yes, obviously, but it sort of infiltrated the whole city, which is great. So yeah, it's and again, a lot of people, come to Manhattan during the day, and then at night they go back to the other boroughs after work is done. So it's also a different feeling, when people are not there for work, because everyone goes to the city on the weekends and for the work, and then when it's just the locals, it's kind of a different vibe also. So yeah, it's incredible. I just took the last 2 years I've gone back to New York to go see the Rangers in the playoffs, and I brought my son with me because we like going to New York together to see hockey games, and it's just such a treat whenever we go back. And I love looking at the city through my family's eyes, because my wife is a native Californian. She grew up by Redondo Beach in Torrance, California. My kids are raised in California, so I love exposing them to the way I grew up, and it's fun for me. Yeah, exactly. And I just like experiencing it through their eyes. It's a fun thing for me too.
That's awesome. You see, now as a military brat growing up, I got to basically move somewhere every 2 years, and so for my kids, my kids don't get to know that. They get to understand what rural Wisconsin is like, which, when I used to tell people I was from Wisconsin, as you mentioned, people who say, you don't sound like you're from New York. Right. The one thing people always said to me was, oh, you're from Wisconsin. And I went, is that the qualifier for what we sound like, is to sound like a sassy black lady?
It is Wisconsin, not Wisconsin.
Yeah.
This is where you come to get a mansion.
It's so funny if you don't have the sound that people associate with your region. The flag goes up. It's like, what's wrong? You're really from there? It's like, yeah. Are you really from New York? Yes, I really am. You don't sound like you're from Brooklyn, but I really am. So yeah, if it's out of the norm of people, that just goes to show you the reality versus expectation. And if anything throws that expectation is thrown off in any way, people are like, oh, that does not compute to me for some reason.
Well, here's what we're interested in a little bit about this era is that obviously we understand New York, but as you were getting into acting, you got into acting at a fairly young age.
Yeah.
How did you get that start? What was the spark that kind of kicked things off there?
Wow, that's a good question. I started in voiceover, believe it or not. I started doing voice work probably when I was like 10 or 11 years old. So that's, like 48 years ago. You do the math. And my mom had a recording studio in New York and production company. So I was exposed to the voice world at an early age. She was an actress and a singer, and then she opened up the recording studios and production company, and she wrote and produced voiceover commercials for, all over the country. So I was exposed to that part of the business. That's how I got started. And I remember we had a family friend who was an actor, and he was doing a summer stock production of 1,000 Clowns, which is a fantastic play.
That
and it was
sounds
being done,
terrifying to me, but
clowns scare the crap out of me. So they terrify me too. Yeah, I'll tell you, I have another story about that later. And he was saying, there's a part for a young man in this. Would Mitch like to audition, knowing that I was around it, I was exposed to it, and I did the voice. And my mom asked me, "Is this something you want to audition for?" I was like, "Sure." So I went and auditioned for this play in Connecticut. And I came back from the audition, and my mom was like, "How'd it go?" My mom didn't push me in that direction at all. If anything, she was the opposite. She didn't want me to feel like it was something that she thought I should do. She just let me make my own decisions. She's like, "So what'd you think?" I said, "Oh, I got the part. I'm sure I got the part." And she's like, "You know what? It was time for like a reality check." She goes, "That's not really how it works. A lot of people audition. Only one person gets the part. And if you didn't, that's okay, because there are other parts." I was like, "No, I get it, but I'm sure I got it." She's like, "Okay." And that night, I got the call that I got the part. She's like, "Oh, that little stinker." So that's not what she said, but I'm trying to keep it clean for the sake of you guys. So that was the first professional anything that I had done other than voice work. And that was sort of like the start of my interest in it. And then I went to the High School of Performing Arts in New York, which is out here performing arts schools. Like ours was the original. Ours was the Fame School. So they were actually shooting Fame as I was there. They were shooting Fame, I think, my sophomore year. I think my freshman year, I think, is when they were shooting Fame. So, and that was 4 years of acting school and hardcore. And by the time I was done with that, I wanted to go to college and play sports and academia. I didn't want to go for acting to college just because I'd had such an intense experience of 4 years in high school. I wanted to have a more traditional college experience. So I went to Colgate, and I was playing a lot of hockey there and, a lot hardcore academics, and I started missing acting. So after my freshman year, I had got a manager and an agent in New York, and I started traveling for the next couple of years of college back and forth between Colgate and New York auditioning. And finally, after my junior year, Colgate was like, "Why don't you take a semester off, get your grades back up, and decide, what you want to do?" I was like, "Okay." Took the semester off, went back to New York, was auditioning and working, got some roles. Also went to Hunter College, got my grades up to like a 4.0, and Colgate was like, "Okay, you ready to come back?" And at the same time, I had just gotten the road company of Brighton Beach Memoirs, the Neil Simon play. And I was like, it was decision time, because I started thinking, well, college will be there if I want to go back, but how often does a national tour of a Broadway show come along? So that's the choice that I made. I went and did that show, and that was really the real start of everything in my professional career. And after that, did more theater, more stage, more road companies. And then by the time I was 25, my buddy and I got in a car. We was like, if this is the path that we want, he was on the producer side, on the production side. I was on the acting side. We both got in his car, came out to California knowing no one. And within a year, I had started doing movies, out here in California, and he was working for Fox. And both of our careers kind of took off out of just like, let's get in the car and go, let's give it a shot. And that's what happened, Wow. A whole life
incredible.
Summarized in one word. So that's going to happen. The Sharon Playhouse was my first thing. And then, coming out, deciding to make that move after getting, after being on stage and thinking, if I want to do more movies and TV, California is the place to be. And that's, when I was 25, moved out here, been out here ever since. So 25 years in New York, 33 years in California. Kills me that it's now tilted in California's favor. Not that California's bad, it's wonderful. But I always say I'm a New York guy, but now I've been here longer than I was there, which is weird. It's weird to think that. It's like kind of a weird reality. I'm a weird guy.
Do you ever miss being able to assault people, though, in an organized fashion, and people are actually cheering you for it? Like, do you miss that feeling at all?
I've never assaulted anyone in organized fashion. What are you talking about?
That's what hockey is. I'm a former football player, right? Look at this neckline. You see?
I see it. I tell you, I miss hockey all the time. And I only got into a few fights. I was a goalie. So you really had to, you really had to
mess up good.
Yeah. I mean,
you had that was a personal beef with someone if they came to fight the goalie, right?
Fight with a goalie and it's at your own peril. I have so much protection on. Even if I took my helmet off to get past my chest protector, it would just be hard. Plus, the rest of the team would jump on you anyway. That's the one thing, and we talked about this off the air. I've had both knees replaced at this point. And the one harsh reality is that I'm not probably ever going to play hockey again, which kills me because I just think of, the smell of the cold. I used to skate, when I was in college, I'd skate in a tank top and shorts. So, I love being on the ice and the smell of it, the feel of it, and I just love it. So the idea that I can't do that anymore, that's the one thing. It's okay, hockey, not going to happen. But hopefully I'll be able to skate again soon, which would be really cool and the next best thing. But yeah, I miss... not necessarily the assaulting part, maybe a little, but no, mostly just being on the ice. And I love the sport. I follow the sport. I refereed women's collegiate hockey as a side job while I was at Colgate. So cool. As a referee, I loved it, and playing, it was just the best. So now I settled for fandom. I live vicariously through my New York Rangers. And if I can skate again, that's my goal by next year. My next Christmas, not this Christmas, next Christmas, I want to be on the ice again, just skating. I don't have to have a stick. I don't have to hit anybody. It'll be fine. I just want to be skating again. That's a little goal I set for myself.
Now, I will explain why I said it that way, because when I was in 8th grade football, my coach at the time, he was yelling at us in drills long before the season started. And he goes, "You better enjoy every damn minute of this, because this is the last time in your life you're going to get to hit people and no one's going to arrest you." Exactly. And I was like, you know what? You're right. I'm thinking about it that way now. But that's why I say it that way.
I better get my aggression on. I totally get it. I totally get it, and it's true. It's just it's a great. But I do remember when I came out to California when I was 25, and I wanted to skate. Maybe play with some pickup teams out here, and I remember even up into my early 30s, I would go people would say, "Hey, do you want to come play?" And I'd always go watch before I'd commit and say yes, because I had to see what I was getting into. And whenever you have guys in their 30s playing a sport, there's going to be some element of aggression showing. I've still got it. I'm still that same guy I was in high school / college / yesterday. And, there's always going to be. So I would always go and see, okay, am I here to play or am I here to fight? People just want. And I would go watch the game, and inevitably, within 10 minutes of the first period, two guys, that shouldn't have been fighting to begin with, didn't even know how to fight, but they thought they should. They're dropping the gloves and swinging. I'm like, I do not need this. I do. I just want to stay in shape and have fun. I don't want to fight. I just want to play. So it was a very funny sort of thing for me coming out here and, not being able to really play as much, and probably a good thing. Because like I said, when you start playing, more competitive sports and you're in your 30s, things tend to go south and sort of, regress into people beating the crap out of each other for no reason. And then going, hey, let's get a beer after. I'm like, couldn't you have just done that without the fighting in the middle? I just, we're here to just get a good workout and get a good sweat and have some fun. So yeah, I miss it. I do miss it.
Yeah, that's not how it works. That's not how any of this works.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what. There's no easy way to shift gears, but oddly enough, our first fan question of the night is going to take us towards that kind of topic. Joe, if you want to take us away.
Yeah, our fans wanted to know, where did your love of Super 73 bike come from, and has the collection grown, or is it still static?
Wow. So I have a radio show on Sirius XM. My buddy Mark Aflalo, if I could say his name, Mark Aflalo, and I have a radio show on Sirius XM called Your Tech Report. And it's something we started just for fun because we both love technology. And it started off as a website. Then, we got an offer from Sirius XM to take the show to Sirius XM, and we did. And I had read about Super 73. And they make great electric motorbikes, and I love them. And I reached out to Michael Canavo, one of the co-founders, and he actually became a friend. He became a real-life friend. And cool. I just love these bikes. To answer the question, that's how I got in through my radio show, and then through interviewing Michael Canavo, the co-founder, who's still there today, and the company's blown up. They're like a huge multi-million-dollar company now. And I love their products, especially having had all the surgeries, having an electric bike where I can hit the pedal assist and not worry about getting up the tough hills as part of my rehab. Fantastic. I have 5 bikes. I'm actually thinking of paring down the collection a little bit. It's maybe 3 or 4, but no, I have 5 bikes. a couple of the originals, and then some of the newer products too. And I love them. So if you've never seen Super 73, go check them out at WW. Yeah. So that's how I got in. The collection was growing as of about a year ago, and it's been static for a year. And now I think I'm going to pare it down one or two. But I love the company just because they're all good people, and they make a really good product that they stand behind, which is also pretty cool. And I love it. I was riding mine yesterday. Took mine out to the park yesterday to see my son playing basketball. So yes, I'm still a Super 73 guy.
Yep, you know what? And honestly, in my opinion, if the bike doesn't have a motor on it, it's probably not worth owning anyway, because seriously, who needs fitness?
Like, this whole fitness thing, let me tell you, it's great. No, it's good. Motor. At least you get the choice. You can pedal, or like most people, you can either throttle or use the pedal assist. And I've become a huge fan of pedal assists, and I can do a little something, feel good about myself, and then just, throttle the rest of the way,
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I'm not a really big into bikes myself, but that's mostly because you can't really see the sheer size of me. The idea of falling off a bike is it's too much for me to deal with. But
oh, please. That scares the hell out of me too, especially now. But I'm not as sure. I used to ride bikes all the time and, ride with one hand and not even think about it now as I'm getting older. Like, I don't want to break a hip. I've already had 2 new knees. I don't need 2 new hips. It's gotten in my head. That's the worst part. It's gotten in my head. And I'll actually wear a helmet now, which I do recommend. People young and old, just save your noggin, because weird things can happen. Even like you hit a stupid twig, you hit like a slick patch, and you are going over and especially if you're going on something that's motorized and you're going with any speed, or people can get up to that same speed just on a regular traditional bike. So I do wear a helmet now too. I no longer do it's going to mess up what's left of my hair. I can't do the helmet. No, I do mess up both of my hairs, and I wear a helmet. Yes.
Yes, always way to go. Like, as someone who has laid out his motorcycle before, always wear. Yeah, and the same thing. Like, because the state of Minnesota, apparently their idea of fixing a street is just to put down roughly 1 metric ton of pea gravel and call it a day. So you just tap the brakes, they lock up, the bike goes down, and you slide.
Oh yeah.
Not great.
Not really what you want. And that's the pea gravel is tough to pull out of your arm and leg for years to come. So you don't want to be doing that either.
Yeah. Which also, on that note, do have proper all riding gear, not just a helmet if you're motorbiking.
Exactly. Get your leather on, get your leather, your denim, whatever you need to wear to protect yourself. Absolutely. Yeah. See, we do public service stuff here too.
Yeah, here we go. See, who knew they were coming here for safety tips today? No one.
The more you know. There you go.
You're damn right. Spay and neuter your pets while you're at it. Now,
thanks, Mr.
Something
Barker.
about Now, Mitchell, something about your social media that is very unique that I really appreciate. If you can't tell, Joe and I are kind of nerds on this podcast.
Love that.
When I found your social media, the first thing I noticed was the bevy of board games and tabletop love, and of course I'm going to be a fan of that. How did your tabletop journey begin?
Wow. I was a big board game player. I learned to play cards and board games when I was really young. I think I was playing bridge by the time I was 8. Playing a lot of board games too, and not just the more traditional Monopoly, Life, and all those, Clue, but some other, like 221B Baker Street, which was sort of like a whodunit. It's a great game. I think it's still in print now. And as I got a little older, playing sports and playing games, they both have that same competitive edge going for them sometimes. And I was ultra competitive. And I realized that, people maybe didn't want to play if you were too ultra competitive. And I had to sort of tone that part of my gaming down. And as I got older, board games sort of went to the side a little bit. And then over the last maybe 4 or 5 years, I've gone so gung-ho. I mean, I can't even show you. My office, I probably have, I'm looking around here, probably around 75 games, and then the other 300 are in the garage. So it's a little crazy. I remember my brother came out to visit me from New York, and he's like, "Hey, I brought this little card game called Love Letter. Do you want to try it?" I was like, "Yeah." So I don't know if you've ever played Love Letter. It's a simple card game. Everyone has it. It's like a draw a card, play a card. You have one card, pull a second, play it. It's very simple, sort of a deduction game, and something about it, I was hooked. And from that little card game, this collection has grown into, Kickstarter loves me, and I love Kickstarter, and and GameFound, and it just really over the last 4 years, I've been driving my wife crazy because I'm taking up so much room with the friggin' board games. And we moved into a bigger house now, and we have a three bay garage with, like, we built an extra attic space, so it's almost the full length of the garage. And, you know, she's just, she's horrified. And sometimes I look at it, you know, I step out of myself and I look at the collection. I'm like, yeah, that's crazy. That's a lot of gaming goodness. Yeah. And I'm trying not to be just a collector. Actually, I'm trying to get through the games that I've ordered and bought and purchased over the years. And it's hard because sometimes they come in faster than you can play them. But I'm having such a good time. It's become a real passion. And between that and video games, I mean, I don't know if you saw it. I think you might have seen on social media today. I just got my retro Dream console back. I got my Sega Dreamcast back, just so I could play CMan and 2K football. So,
hold on a second now.
Yeah.
CMan.
CMan is something that lives on in the hearts and minds of Dreamcast fans around the world. And one of my favorite things was logging into that game and hearing Leonard Nimoy say,
"Oh yeah,
the CMan are hungry in the tank," and you're just like, okay, all right. I know I have to go do this. Everything else is out. I'm going to do this now.
I got the console. In fact, a buddy of mine picked it up back east and shipped it out to me. It's so clean. I have it in there. It looks so beautiful. I got the Dreamcast just so I could show my son CMan. Because I said, I said, Ryan, you've never seen a game like this. They don't make games like this anymore, probably for the better. It's weird and it's fun. And I'll never forget, I went away to Vegas for the weekend when I got it originally. And I came home to find a dead CMan in a dark tank. And I was so upset. My wife was like, what's wrong? I think we were just, dating at the time. But I was like, I killed my CMan. And I'm surprised she stuck around. Honestly, she stuck around. Now she's being, bombarded with board games. This poor woman. She's such a good person. Doesn't deserve this. But yeah,
It's an odd journey that Tamagotchi has taken to eventually get us to CMan. And, I don't think the gaming industry has been brave enough since.
That's where the Japanese games. That's where the Japanese games are fantastic because and this is just a reality. The Japanese video games in general have always had a little bit of a different tone than American video games. Some argue better, some argue not less interesting, more interesting. I find them incredibly interesting, and themes and stories and games and experiences that you would never think to have. And CMan was one of them. Like I said, Tamagotchi is like having a virtual pet with a human face, which is just disturbing. And I was so happy. And it's, by the way, my copy I just ordered on eBay should be here next week. That game, I wish I'd kept it because it is even used. It's still like $150 game. And then new, you're talking $300 or $400. I mean, a lot of the retro games, as you guys I'm sure both know, it's a big market, big money, and people are spending a lot of money to go back to those experiences that we had years ago, which are still amazing. They're still amazing. I mean, the Dreamcast still looks great. The graphics look great. So I'm just, So
isn't it weird though?
Yeah.
On the opposite ends, like if it was a very popular game, ton of money. It was on the low end that nobody played, just as expensive. Yep. And it's just weird how collecting is always like that, seemingly.
Well, it's like a cult corner of the market. It's just that thing that was so bizarre, so weird. It didn't take off for a lot of people, but hung out for a very select few. And then when you go back and look at it and you realize just how much fun and just how bizarre it was, and that just adds to it, it just resurfaces better than before. And this is something where I snuck into a business lesson with my students. They were talking about supply and demand, and I used vintage video games as an example. It's like the supply is low, and now that the millennials have their money again, have adult money, we want the things we had when we were a kid, and so demand is high. And they're not making them anymore, so here we are.
Perfect example of supply and demand. You beat me to it, absolutely. And I think the fact that it wasn't super popular when it came out is the very thing that makes it so, so scarce right now. They didn't make a lot of them. They just didn't. I think it was originally released for the Japanese market. It came to the American market. It was more popular in Japan than it was here because of the virtual pet, craze that was going on there and then here as well. But yeah, I mean, I got one with the box and it has the manual and still has the green foam on the microphone. It wasn't even disintegrated. So I mean, even I'll probably take that off. But I'm so excited just to play the game. I didn't buy it to have it as a collectible. I bought it to play it. So I can't wait. That and 2K football. Have a couple of VMUs plugged into the controllers. I'm good to go. I'm good to go.
So This is something I wanted to ask you about because I remember seeing you find Animal Crossing right around the same time I did, or at least at least New Horizons, right? Like right near early pandemic.
Oh yeah.
Now that got me through early pandemic. I mean, how many hours would you say you put in on that game?
Oh my God, I didn't even. You know what's funny? I got so sidetracked, as I do even playing like RPGs. You know, I get like Skyrim. I got so obsessed with Scott, you know, side quests that, I forgot to finish up my main quest. And it's the same thing with Animal Crossing. I don't even think I got that performer to come to my island and sing because I was so but I was listen, I was the illicit, you know, fruit dealer from the West Coast because I was sending people because, you know, depending on where you played the game in your region, you would grow certain fruits naturally in your game that maybe they'd be natural to your island, you know, or indigenous to your island. They wouldn't be indigenous to mine. So apples would be nothing for me, but for you, that could be something, you know. So I was trading fruit with my friends in different regions so they could grow it on their island. And I was harvesting. I was making money. I was like some mogul. Meanwhile, you know, to the detriment of the finishing the game, because again, I never finished. I just like decorating my house and growing stuff and then giving, you know, coin to my friends because I was raking in the dough. I just kept on selling to us. They kept on buying my stuff right and left, and it was great. I was making money, and I didn't finish the game. But yeah, that game came out at the perfect time. It's one of those games where you try to explain to people what it is, and it's just a life simulator of sorts. And the most germane and the most mundane tasks just gave you joy because it was an escape, and it was just, again, during a time where we really needed it. And it did make me go back to my 3DS and pulling out Animal Crossing for that and getting all my old Mario games and my old Zelda games for the 3DS, which, by the way, still look and play perfectly. It did make me go back and want to revisit those, which I have been doing. So I got a little bit of retro thing going now. I really have a little retro thing going on, and I'm embracing it. Damn it. I'm a retro guy now. It's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think in the pandemic I replayed a lot of The Legend of Zelda because I have like the golden cartridge for my NES. Like that's
worth a pretty penny. Oh yeah.
So I thankfully I play that through. We did like Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time again. My favorites growing up. So just it was peak video gaming time.
And you know what? There's something about going back to a happier time or going to your happy place, going back to the things that gave you joy. And there's a certain comfort in that. And that nostalgia, it's really tangible when it comes to video games. And, you know, when you start playing those games again, you almost have this like visceral response, like, I remember when I first got this game and I remember waiting, you know, going to the store and getting it and being so excited. So it really is one of those great sort of happy, safe places to go back to. And because gaming is such a source of joy for me now, I had forgotten what a source of joy it was for me 20, 30 years ago. So revisiting that and just, again, like I did with New York, experiencing some of the older games with my kids and letting them see, it's really kind of fun and it's kind of special because everyone remembers where they were and they played their first Zelda or Mario. And that's why all those Nintendo games still hold up because they weren't about graphics. They weren't about power and about having a 1,000-hour game that you can't. It was just about the experience and having fun.
Yeah.
And that's why Nintendo is still successful. And they didn't get into that power game that, you know, Microsoft, which I love, and Sony, they got into that power battle. Nintendo didn't play that. They just did their own thing, and I think they've been the better for it over the years.
Nintendo did get into the power glove, though.
Oh,
so they know about power, just not in the sense that you're mentioning.
Yeah. Now you're playing with power. Portable power. Oh, yeah.
Which does steer us.
Video games. I was going to go, aha. I had the transition this time.
You had the Segue. Go. Let's hear your Segue. Let's hear.
Yeah. So I say, speaking of video games and an odd, not an odd, but a different transition in your life of going backward to the things that you loved. Your career continues to evolve and move forward. And with this rekindling of the old video games, do you think that your career will move more towards you working with video games?
I've done video games. I've done a bunch of different video games over the years. It was never my primary, because I have a lot of friends, Nolan North and just like a bunch of guys over the years that just are made a fantastic living and really brought them a ton of recognition and just incredible work in Troy Baker, who I've worked with on a bunch of different things. And these guys are incredibly entrenched in that world. I never got into it to that degree, not because I didn't want to, just because it didn't work out that way. I would definitely do more video games. I will tell you, as a voice actor, video games kill your voice. Because when you think about it, when you think about the design, how video games are designed, it's an if this, then this sort of thing, like a basic equation, right? Done with binary code. It's a series of choices. If you do this, then and it's a series of branching choices. The way that a lot of games work. So when you program it, you're programming it with a bunch of variables. When you're voicing it, you also have to voice it with a bunch of variables. So you have to die 10 different ways depending on what happens. You have to be screaming at the top of your for 10 different possibilities. And those sessions kill you. So you'll hear like voice actors going, "Oh, those video games, it's great to do, but man, they kill my voice. Make sure I have a session at the end of the week. I don't want to do it at the beginning of the week because it kills me for everything else for the rest of the week." They're tough. Yeah. I mean, it's not tough like, finding the cure for cancer and being a firefighter or police officer or, being in the armed forces, but it's, from an voice actor's perspective, video games can be killer on your voice. That being said, I've had great times doing video games. I mean, I got to voice Donatello from TMNT for my movie, which was great. I've also done, I'm trying to think what other, I was one of the Skylanders and Skylanders. I've done several others, but sure, I'd definitely be open to doing more. So yes, I think over the last, 10 years, the voice world has taken more center stage than film and TV have for me in terms of live action. And I would go back to live action. I definitely would, if the situation was right. And, but yeah, I could see myself definitely doing more video games as well. They're fun. And plus, as a gamer, who doesn't want to hear themselves? I'm friends with Roger Craig Smith, and Roger Craig Smith, I don't know if you know, he's amazing. So I'll play a game, and I'll be like, "Oh, Podge," that's what I call him. And I'm playing as my buddy. I'm like, "Oh, Podge, you're so agile. Look at you jump. You're so good." And I'll talk to my friends as if they're there, which is, again, creepy, but fun. And then I'll call Roger and go, "Dude, he's like, I know it's weird, isn't it?" It's like, yeah, it's weird to hear you or hear me, but it's more fun playing as you than it is playing as me. So yeah, I have a lot of friends that are in it, and I get a kick out of listening to them. It's sort of comforting. Familiar voices, familiar friends are always there when I'm gaming because they're all people that I know. So it's really kind of fun.
He's probably not going to hear this episode, but he's my favorite assassino.
Oh, right yeah.
Assassino.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of my favorite ones.
Fantastic. He's great.
Yes.
And by the way, one of the most underrated voices of Batman that you'll ever hear. His Batman was fantastic.
Yeah, he was Batman.
He was amazing. But I digress. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he was also Bigfoot, cool. By the way. He was also Bigfoot. My kids love the Bigfoot family. And,
really?
And he was Bigfoot in that one.
How could I not know that? How could I know all my friends' credits? Don't tell them I didn't know. If you have him on the show, say, "Yeah, Mitchell loved you as Bigfoot."
Yeah.
have my back here, guys.
Yeah,
absolutely, 100%. And so like bringing up this, and this is not a fan question, this is a me question.
Go.
You brought up earlier about how when you take on like certain kind of characters, you get excited about it, you get into it, and you kind of feel more for the character, and you have to do that. And you're bringing up some of your voice actor friends from incredibly big franchises like Roger Craig Smith in Assassin's Creed or Norland North from Uncharted. If you could get yourself into any video game like series or franchise that has like kind of like a similar weight, where would you want to go? What would you want to be a part of?
That's a fantastic question, Joe Joseph. I'm calling you both now. I'm just covering myself.
You know what? You got both of them. You didn't go Joey. This is working great.
No. That's a great question. Wow, I never really thought of that. My first thing is, I'd like to be part of the Marvel Universe in some way. That would be a blast just because I'm such a, superhero nerd. But honestly, probably something that would suit me better would be something either RPG or action RPG. I'm a huge Diablo fan, and my friends and I are always doing Deckard Cain. Come, let us see if we can get your forces. So I'll play the entire game talking as Deckard Cain, usually saying inappropriate things to my friends, making them laugh. But the idea of playing a character that sort of grows and evolves, and playing a character that you voice, or even if you're an NPC in a game, it's just fun. And for some reason, Blizzard just never hired me for anything. I've auditioned for Diablo and I think Overwatch and different stuff, and which killed me because, again, the things that you want, it's like, wait a minute, I've been in movies. Don't you want me to do Diablo for you? What's wrong? Come into this cave. My soul just left me. They left me to die. Please avenge me. I don't care. I could be that dying dude that you step over and he pops gold out of his guts. I don't care. I would have done it. It would have been fine. So probably something maybe Blizzardy would have been good, RPG-ish, or even Skyrim, just something, where I could just, something like that. That would have been great.
I think you would be perfect for like Claptrap, like from Borderlands.
Can I tell you something? People, because the character Fix-It also sounded kind of like this from Transformers, and people thought that I was the voice of Claptrap because there was that similar kind of, and I was like, no, that's not me. He goes, it sounds like you. I was like, yeah, there's a similar timbre to the voice. I could hear it because a lot of the characters I do are kind of up here.
Yeah.
Claptrap would have been perfect. So yeah, you know what? Add Borderlands to that. Add
there we
Borderlands
go.
to that.
Ooh,
that would have been
go.
cool too. I love anything that that's why I loved Diablo, because you can loot, you can always get a new weapon. I'm in the middle of playing Diablo 4 right now. I'm almost my druid is almost level 40, and I still am not even finished Act 2, so you can tell I like doing the side quests.
Fantastic.
A little bit of a
power leveling. Here we go.
I am just having so much fun with Diablo. I've waited 10 years for Diablo 4 to come out.
Yeah.
As soon as I've been playing Diablo 3 for a decade. I have like 3 billion gold. My friends tease me. I always give them $1 million whenever I can. I give millions to my friends. 3 billion gold. What am I going to do with that much gold? There aren't much, there aren't so many gems I can make that'll use that money up. So yeah, I'm obsessed. But if I could be in one of those kind of games, that'd be awesome.
So now, fun follow-up question. Would you use your powers for good or evil as a voice actor in one of these games? Now, for instance, the actor who is the voice of Cassidy Cole in Overwatch, formerly Jesse McCree, has been known for playing online and being in voice chat with his teammates and just going, "It's high noon," and watching his teammates scatter.
Oh yeah.
Like, would you mess with people if you had the opportunity?
I probably wouldn't, only because that would involve hearing group chat. And I learned years ago, I had my Xbox settings, my privacy settings, so that I can only hear people that are on my friends list or in my party. So, and I learned that because I remember I went online, I was playing Halo with my brother-in-law at the time, and we were playing something, and we just got into the lobby, and someone said something which I can't repeat, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to turn chat off for everyone but you guys. And I never looked back after that. So because people can be people are very brave when they can say things online and there's no repercussion. When people are very brave when there's, you can say things and there's no chance of being punched in the mouth. People are very brave when it comes to that. Whether it's online or social media, people tend to be very brave when there are no consequences. And I find it upsetting. I hear there's a lot of toxic chat in lobbies, people dropping racial slurs and homophobic stuff. And I'm just like, you know what? How old are you guys, really? Yeah. And so years ago, I stopped. So this is like a long-winded way of saying I would mess with people, but it will involve having to hear the other people. And I wouldn't mind having fun with the good people that are out there. God knows there are plenty of good people out there. But all I'd have to hear is like one person saying something toxic, and I'd be just like, yeah, and this is why, and I'm going to group chat. Yeah. But yes, that would be a lot of fun to mess with people with the voice.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know I left out My Cousin Vinny in the introduction, which once again, I deeply apologize for that.
You know what? The fact that I'm still here is a testament to my courage and strength. Go ahead.
Courage is the best word to use.
Courage and strength. Go ahead, yeah.
So here's something that I've been thinking about for years. Now, when Christopher Lee was in Lord of the Rings, he told Peter Jackson how someone should sound when getting stabbed in the back. And when I think about My Cousin Vinny, I think about Friends and the presence of being a New Yorker coming to New York quote unquote productions, right?
Right.
What did you bring to these roles that, being a native New Yorker, that maybe they weren't thinking about? Like, did you have any kind of things like that made it onto those sets?
I don't know if they were necessarily New Yorkisms that I brought in, or first of all, I was very fortunate, especially with My Cousin Vinny, Jonathan Lynn, our director, Dale Launer, our producer, and Paul Schiff, our producer. Dale Launer was our writer, and very generous in letting me ad-lib and having those ad-libs make it into the movie. Not necessarily things that were germane to New York or came off as a New Yorker that would say, but things that I sort of would say, or situations that come up, like in the scene where we're being arraigned, and she's and she says Stanley Rothenstein, and I look at Ralph, I'm like, it's Steen. She said, not Stein. And I just remember thinking, I was like offended, like here we are about to be on trial for our lives, and I was pissed that she mispronounced my name. So, so little things like little ad-libs that I did that made it in, I was very grateful that they were gracious enough to let those ad-libs stay in. I think there's a certain, New York has a certain rhythm that's different as a city. I think living there, you have to have a certain rhythm that's different living there than living in other places. I'd like to think that energy and that rhythm comes through in the roles that I do that are New York characters. And Stan sort of had this more of like a manic thing than like, it wasn't like your typical New Yorker, he's talking, doing a thing like that. It wasn't that kind of New York thing, but it was that manic rhythm that he had that I think came to it, that I was able to bring to it, that was kind of fun for me. So yes, I think I do bring definitely my experience as a New Yorker, as a New York actor, but it doesn't necessarily come through in the way you think it might. But yeah, I enjoy that. I enjoy playing New York character. I remember when I auditioned for my Cousin Vinny out here, where I first auditioned for it, originally they weren't sure they wanted to see me because they wanted a New York actor. It's like, I just moved from New York 8 months ago. I've only been here for 8 months. I'm still in New York. Well, they want a New York guy. They want a real New York guy. I was like, I am a real New York guy. I just moved out here 8 months ago. So finally they saw me, they liked me, and I actually had to fly back to New York for the screen test. For the mix and match with Ralph.
Did they watch to see what restaurants you visited just to ensure that you are from New York? Yeah. Wait. He's going towards Olive Garden. Don't trust that man.
No, I remember exactly where I went because with the studio we screen tested was, I think, in like the high teens or low 20s between 5th and 6th Avenue in the city. And there was a place there on 23rd and 6th called Lox Around the Clock. It was a restaurant, like they had like bagels and lox, but they also had regular food too. And its thing was that, like a lot of New York places, it was open 24 hours a day. So I remember after I auditioned, and I had to like stay there for 8 hours to do like the mix and match and wait till they released me to go home. And I remember sitting at that restaurant waiting to find out, am I going to hear anything today? And I didn't hear anything until like the last. You have to sign. That's the thing about a screen test. A lot of people don't know. You sign your contract before your final audition. The screen test involves you signing your contract, then you go do your final screen test. And that way, if they like you, it's smart on the studio's part, because if you find out that you're the guy, you already have the contract signed. You can't sort of hold it over like, well, hey, you like me, you're going to have to pay now, which I couldn't have done anyway because I'd never done that much anyway, so I couldn't have done that, and I wouldn't have done that, but it's smart. So I had to wait for the full 2 weeks of that screen test option to be up before I got the call, like just before 6 o'clock 2 weeks later, to find out that I got the part. But yeah, I went to Lox Around the Clock, which is no longer there, and it kills me because that's a part of my New York history. So it's been taken from me, but I'm fine.
Hey, smoked salmon is like an industry here in Wisconsin. I mean,
it's so good. Smoked salmon's so good.
Yeah, they put bits of it in our baby bottles.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's some tough kids growing up there, huh?
Yeah, you sure. Yeah, but here's something. Now, when we first started chatting, I told you I wanted to ask questions that you hopefully haven't been asked before. This one is going to be weird, and I apologize in advance.
No, bring on the weird. Let's hear how weird it is.
All right. Well, you tried out for the role of Ross and Chandler, right, on Friends.
Correct.
And I have to wonder, do you think you would have gotten the role of Ross if you had tried out the leather pants that he had to wear later on in the series?
I don't think anyone really wants to see that.
If it was head-to-head, do you think you could leather off David Schwimmer?
Poor choice of words with leather pants, my friend.
Yes.
Poor choice of words with leather pants.
Yes.
Let's just acknowledge that right now. That was I took this in a very weird direction. I would hope not. I would hope that the leather pants would not have pushed me over the edge. That was such a weird, talk about like an interesting dynamic about, being brought in for something. They weren't sure whether I was right for Ross or Chandler. They brought me in for both, and they kept on bringing me back for Ross. Then my agent was negotiating my contract for Ross. And at the last minute, it's like, oh, we're going to see one more guy. And it was David Schwimmer, and he got the part. And, but you know what? People say that when they hear it, like, for me, like, they cringe for me. Like, oh, my God, could you imagine? I'm like, yeah, but imagine all the butterfly effect. Who knows what would have happened in my life? Would I like the way everything turned out. And I was happy playing Barry. And I've gotten so many great roles, and I'm sure other people are like, man, I wish I'd gotten that role. So I feel really fortunate. I never looked back and thought, man, I really wish, that sucks. I'm really upset. I wasn't wired that way. And I think as an actor, you can't really dwell on that stuff, because I think part of being an actor and having some longevity in the business is being able to categorically forget that yesterday happened, like emptying the cache of your computer and just wiping it clear. So that way you move forward and you're not looking back at all the stuff that could have been or may have been, which is incredibly destructive. And especially in this industry where people sort of, can grow to rely on getting parts and get as a source of validation for them personally. It's hard.
Yeah.
I mean, as an actor, when you don't get a job, it isn't like, oh, I'm selling cars and, I guess people didn't want to buy a Honda or they didn't want to buy a BMW today. It's not my fault. It's not me that, as an actor, they didn't want you. It's not your car. It's not your project. It's not your right. They don't want you. So it's very easy to become sort of overly introspective and get crazed about all the things that did or didn't happen. And I think the ability to forget what happened yesterday is probably the best ability you can have as an actor, along with the knack and the desire to do the work. Just sort of forget that yesterday happened and move on. So I never really looked back. But I have a lot of friends, Joe, that reacted like you did, that had the same sort of like, oh, so close. And my wife was like, well, maybe we wouldn't have met had you, I said, that's true.
Yeah,
you never know.
true.
I said, I like to think we still would have met, but I feel very blessed and really lucky and fortunate to do what I have done. So I never think about the stuff that may have been, but the leather pants may have been the tipping point. Thank God I didn't wear them.
So here's a connection I want to make that, and let me know if you agree or disagree with this.
Sure.
Now, since you obviously have like a lot of experience with tabletop and board games in general, now I feel like this attitude you've just talked about is very similar to how board games kind of work, because a lot of times with board games, we check our competitiveness and it's less about winning and more about playing the game, experiencing the game.
Yeah.
And would you say that's what your attitude kind of is towards acting too? Like it's not always about just winning and losing. It's about how you participate and how you put yourself into the industry. Like, would you say that's fair as far as your approach goes?
I think it has to be that way. I think because there are so many things as an actor, and yes, and by the way, I feel the same way about board games. It's more of an experience for me, and that's why I mostly sort of pursue. I pursue more cooperative games, I think, because I'd rather have it us against the world rather than us against each other. I just want to have fun experience with my friends. And wait, how did you relate it to acting again? Because I don't want to forget about what you said. Because I was.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, because I tried to equate it less about, like you kind of mentioned, it's not always about winning and losing.
Yes.
It's the experience instead that's kind of driving through this.
And I got sidetracked with my own little verbose outburst there. I think you have to. I think you have to be driven by the experience, because the outcome is out of your control. That's the one thing you learn as an actor. I mean, and that's why you see so many actors that want to produce, and with the producer credit, you get to choose what goes in the movie, or directing and, controlling the environment, because you realize as an actor, once you do your job on the set and you're gone, that's when the movie is really made. In the editing and there's so much that a director and an editor do together to make that movie what it is. Which take are they going to choose? From which angle are they going to choose? How are they going to cut in and out of the scene? It could be, you can make a million different movies just on those decisions alone. And as an actor, unless you are one of the producers or the director, or own the rights to the film, you don't have those choices. So you have to enjoy the experience and choose it for the experience and what you want to make of that part and how you see that movie and the joy that it brings you to play it, or the story that you think is important that gets told if it's a more serious movie. That's why you do it, because the end result you can't plan and you can't control. And I think sometimes we think that we can, and that's where that rude awakening expression comes in. So I think it has to be more about exactly like what you said. It has to be more about going for the ride, having that experience, approaching it from that point of view, because that's the only thing as an actor is you can control. You do your best work. You take the part for the right reasons. You do the best work that you can, and then it's like at the casino. You walk away and you hope that the people that you work with have a similar vision to create the kind of movie that you want to create. And sometimes it's not the same thing that you would have done, but you end up loving it because it's great in a different way. So just because something is different than you expect, it doesn't mean it's going to be bad. It could be wonderful in a different way than you visualized it being wonderful when you first read it or when you were performing it on set. So yeah, I think it's all about the ride. And if you get great results, that's a bonus. If people appreciate it in the same ways you hope they did, that's a bonus. If the movie's successful, even bigger bonus. So yeah, but I think taking it for the right reasons is important, because at the end of the day, that's all we can really control.
Well, I think it's pretty clear that the roles you've taken, right, the properties you've been a part of, it's very clear to me that you've had a lot of fun doing it, not just yourself, but the people involved. And there's a reason why we're talking about these properties as time goes on. I'm not trying to say we're going all the way back, and I don't want time to be this thing that's like, I don't know, making us all feel old. But I'm just, in general, I'm saying, like, you can tell you were having a lot of fun in all of these properties. And when I look back to like Friends, especially, I just feel like there was this air about the show that it was different compared to some of other network TV. Right. Yeah. Like there's not a lot of attitudes. There's not a lot of competing headbutting and stuff like that. And I mean, is that a fair assessment based off of what you experienced?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, when I read that script, there are only 2 scripts that I read in my career that I knew were going to be huge hits that I auditioned for: Field of Dreams and Friends. And I think anyone who read this script knew it was going to be something special. At least being a part of it was going to be something special. What the results were going to be, I mean, I thought the show would be a hit. I didn't know it would be iconic. I'm thrilled that it was, but yeah, I think it's, I don't know. I feel very fortunate that, you talk about like looking back on my career. It's very strange to me that I remember when Steve Jobs was presenting the first iPhone, he's like, usually if you create, companies are lucky to create one hit product, let alone 3. And I feel the same way. I mean, my Cousin Vinny, still relevant today. Friends, still relevant today. TMNT, the franchise, still relevant today. Transformers, a new movie's coming out in next week, or this week rather.
Yeah.
So to be a part of things that have legs, that people are still talking about, that people still enjoy, that still bring people joy, it's a pretty, and again, again, when I go back to TMNT, I kind of felt the weight of that a little bit. That's what I was talking about, where it had a little bit more gravitas for me because I had an appreciation for it. So it's strange. It's strange, and I feel very fortunate because, again, you're lucky if you get one of these things that people still talk about, and to be part of like 4 of them, that's friggin' nuts.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Which I think is another great time to bring up a fan question.
Sure.
When you brought up that you had a pretty big interest in playing Donatello and being a part of the TMNT franchise. And that is, who is the best Ninja Turtle and why is it Donatello?
Donatello, he's smarter than all of them.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Well, I can't pick anyone other than Donnie. I mean, I loved, listen, until I played Donatello, I loved watching Mikey. Just, he's like, he's kind of a surfer dude. Come on, guys, let's go. All right, yeah. So, Michelangelo is always great. And, Leo and Raffi, they were usually a little more serious. And I think I appreciated the humor that Donnie and Mikey brought to it a little more. But Donatello for me, and I think Donatello is kind of relatable, especially in the wonderful nerd culture that we all embrace right now. He's sort of like the underdog of the group. He's he's their man behind the computer screen that also is out there doing the fighting too. Sort of like jack of all trades. So for me, that was perfect. As a huge tech nerd, I was thrilled. It was like the perfect part for me. So I'll go with Donnie, just because if I didn't, it would be wrong.
Oh yeah, so, and I don't know if you've got a chance to watch any of like the more recent iterations of the show and the Nickelodeon CGI one that came out. Oh God, I mean, I'm going to say
there's
it
a
felt
new
like
version?
a year ago. Oh,
I didn't know that.
I mean, it's eternal. Yeah, the turtles just keep on going. But when they talk about like the B Squad with him and Mikey, and like there's a camaraderie about it that's fun.
Oh yeah.
And Donnie's love for flowcharts, like that is one of the best Donatello moments I have seen outside of tech support. Where he just has this whole flowchart of talking to April because he's got a crush on her, and then he leaves to do something, and the turtles are like, oh, there's no way that was on his flowchart, and they looked at it like, wait a second, guys.
Yeah.
This whole thing was on his flowchart.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. So
now this show does have an explicit rating. I'm not going to use it to its fullest extent, but what I will say about Donatello is that the bow, the staff, is a defensive weapon, and he knows how to use every inch of it. So, ladies, you heard it here first.
Wow.
But
Wow, we went there. Go ahead.
take.
Yeah, go ahead.
yes,
Hot
yes,
take, yeah.
hot take,
Yeah.
hot take. But shifting gears from TMNT to Transformers for a moment,
Yes,
and on
yes.
the topic of having a lot of fun, every time I see a photo of robots in disguise and behind the scenes, I see like you and Will Friedle and Carrie Payton. It feels like you guys had so much fun. How did you get work done? I mean, it looked amazing to work together on that.
That was the most fun definitely the most fun I've had in any animated series I've ever worked on. And maybe one of the most fun cast, bar none, even including live action. I just was texting with Ted McGinley like a few weeks ago, and he lives not that far from me, and his son went to Colgate, which we're talking about where I went.
Oh, cool.
And I still chat with Constance now and then, and like you said, Will and Kari, and it was such and Roger was recurring on that show too. Troy Baker was recurring on the show. I mean, we had an incredible cast, and there were certain episodes where things would happen where we couldn't look at each other, basically, to answer your question, or else we couldn't have gotten through. I mean, there were a couple of episodes where there were a couple like little subtle jokes in the script where I had some scenes with Roger, and he came in, he's like, "Don't look at me, don't look at me." I was like, "I'm not looking at you, I'm not looking at you." And we aimed our microphones like at a 90-degree angle, so we wouldn't have to look at each other because we would have started laughing, and then it would have been done. But I do remember the first time we did the pilot, and Peter Cullen came in.
Oh.
And he's, that voice,
Mm-hmm.
Autobots,
Yeah.
Rebel, and he starts talking the Autobots, and I was like, oh, it's Optimus, it's Optimus. And then I said something, and he was like, oh, that's funny. That's very funny. I was like, I made Optimus laugh. I was like a little schoolboy. I was like squealing like a little kid. So, I mean, there were just so many moments there that I that little kid in me was constantly coming out at, getting to play with your friends every week is such a joy and such a gift to have. And like I said, there were some weeks we couldn't look at each other because we would never gotten through it. There were times where they were like, guys, you have to stop laughing. You have to stop. We have to get through this. We only have the studio for 4 hours. We have to get through it. So, and we got through it very quickly most of the time. But yeah, it's tough when you're with your friends. But what a great, tough experience to have. Trying not to laugh with your friends at work in a project that you love, that you get paid to do very nicely. And it was the best. One of my favorite acting experiences. Like I said, live action, animation, doesn't matter. One of my favorite acting experiences ever. Just the best.
Yeah. My son loves that show, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And so like when I see the photos and I watch the show with him, and I just start thinking about that, like how much fun could that have been? It had to have been a blast. It had to have felt like, it had to have felt like a frat party without the alcohol and without any police inquiries, Well, maybe a little.
No, yeah, without any. No, without. We were clean. And I still will call Will and said, "Hey, do you think we're going to get a season 5? You think they're going to bring us back?" Even like this many years later, we still joke about it. How much we'd love to go back and do it again. Just you know what? I think did I get it on iTunes? I might have gotten the series on iTunes. It's so much fun to watch now because there's so many great jokes for adults too. I mean, it's one of those great shows that adults can watch with their kids and get equal enjoyment out of it. So I want to go back and watch the series again just because. I enjoy it. I enjoy watching. I enjoy listening to my friends. And I'm like, oh, that's me. And here's the weird thing, because when you're a regular on an animated series, you'll always double up and do other voices too. Like I might be the custodian in the school. It's like, get off the lawn, you kids. And I'll sit there. I was watching with my family once. I'm like, oh, you hear that guy on the news? That newscaster? That was me. I'm the newscaster. You hear that? And my wife and my kids are like, you're one of the leads in the show. Why do you care that you're It's like, no, but you don't understand. That's really cool. I'm the newscaster. So I'd get the biggest joy out of doing. I had these like 2-line parts that I was like voicing that sounded nothing like me. I was like, that was me. So, yeah, it didn't take much. I'm easily amused. What can I tell you? I'm easily amused.
I mean, you're like Leo in Wolf of Wall Street, just like, hey,
yep.
me.
Pointing while everyone else is looking at you.
Oh my God.
Well, all good things must come to an end, Mitchell, and
I am
you
starving.
have survived.
Thank God you said that. I have some pad thai waiting in there, and I'm like, God, I'm starving.
Well, you have survived the digital dissection, and we would obviously love you free to go get your food. But before you go,
Yes, I'm getting
we
my
would
glasses.
we would love to give you the floor as well. If there's anything you'd like to tell us about, anything you've got going on that you want us to let our listeners know about here.
Born in a small hut in Brooklyn, New York in 1964, Mitchell Whitfield had a tough no. You know what? I really, you're very generous, and a lot of times when I do these interviews, or whether it's podcast or TV show, radio show, people's like, oh, feel free to promote, and it's like, you know what? I love being here to answer your questions. I love hearing your point of view. You asked some great questions, but both of you, by the way. I like hearing the fan questions and being responsive to that, because I'll always, it'll always be something I haven't thought of, and it's sort of interesting. So I'm happy with that. I always have stuff going on. I always have work going on. I'm doing a new series for Disney Junior that I can't even talk about yet, because it's not airing until next year, and no one knows about it yet. But next time you have me on, see how manipulative I am. Hopefully we'll be able to talk more about that once the show's been announced. But I'm always doing something. Just realize that if you check me out on the social medias, as the kids say, it's funny. People follow me and they expect to hear actory stuff, and more times than not, I'm more than happy just to post stuff about board games, video games, and tech and gadgets. So don't be horrified if you follow me because of the acting and you see a lot more board game stuff. I'll post some acting stuff too, but I try not to use it for self-promotion. Maybe I'd still be starring in movies if I did, but I'm happy just talking about board games and stuff. But no, I'm good. I can't. If you will have me back, I would love to come back and talk to you guys some more, because you had some great questions.
I mean, we need to know how your CMan will be doing.
It's true.
In the coming months. So
Again,
we're going to need an update on that when we have you back.
Yes, yeah. Now, if you feed and keep your tank in an appropriate temperature, and make sure to feed him every 2 hours. Yeah, I will come back and tell you how my dude is doing. He's I can't wait to start from scratch with him, and I will not kill him this time. Apparently I completed I was a completionist with that game too. I completed it, but I will have a full update for you, I promise. Well, I'm Mitchell Whitfield, and until next time, keep on dissecting.